Thank you all for coming today for this special meeting, and hopefully we won't have too many more of these, but I think the agenda items as were sent out last week indicate that I think, for this board, this is going to be the most significant decision I think we'll make in the next 10 years, maybe 8 years, 8 to 10 years. We'll give it give a little variable there, and it is one of the major responsibilities we have as board members, along with doing the budget and also overseeing the county attorney and his position. My goal, I think, today in the two agenda items is the first one to talk about the having an acting county administrator being appointed here. We're down to about 5 weeks till March 1st, so we're on a pretty tight timetable here, but we're very fortunate that we have an awful lot of people, in the organization, from 12 department heads and then an assistant county administrator. That's the proper word right now. I think, as you all know from last week, we're also losing Dan Schlant, has elected to retire as well. So that's one, in my opinion, one qualified candidate that's no longer available, if you will. So again, that's not going to be our call necessarily as to finding his replacement. So I think, if we could kind of break this up, possibly in spend an hour and a half on the first one and an hour and a half on the other one. We've budgeted basically 3 hours. If we don't need it, that'd be great. But if we could just keep the conversations on a high plane and try to make some progress here today. And if we, have to, call another special meeting, I will sometime here in the next, I don't know, depending on, I never can get down how many days' notice we have to give everybody. But I do have the authority to call a special meeting without having to get everybody to vote. And if we need to do that, then we will do that consistently here till we get this process down and going. I think starting with agenda item number 1, which is the appointment of the acting county commissioner or county administrator, there's really 2 ways, in my opinion, that we can go on this. We can either A, try to select somebody from the staff that's currently available and has an interest in the position, or B, we can go outside and hire what I'll call a hired gun consultant to come in on an interim basis. There are those type of people out there that will come in and kind of oversee everything as we go through the other process of naming a new county administrator. So I think, if we could maybe start with that discussion as to what the opinion or, of the board members are as to whether they would rather try to select somebody from the internal department heads to fill into that position, or whether we'd prefer to look at possibilities of bringing in somebody from the outside. I've talked with Rodney last week. He's talked with the search firm that we still have under contract from last year about how to go about that process. So with all that being said, we'll just, I'd like to now just go to commissioner comments. And I already see we've got Commissioner Trace on the board to start off with.
I would like to see us internal to keep continuity for acting, and I would recommend Sherry Corrier.
Okay. Commissioner Benak.
Yeah, we've had a very good run with a great team. I think this, time of uncertainty causes a lot of concern, and we don't want to break the run that we've had. I don't think. I think we need to have an interim existing. I agree, Sherry could do the job. I did talk with Mickey about the resolution. I think he brought some of that information with him. I asked for it, of course, yesterday. Realized I wanted to say yesterday on a holiday.
Good going.
But I think he brought some of that that information with him. So I support also having Sherry act as the, I guess it is considered an acting county administrator role while we go through the process, the search process. That would be my. But there was some language in the resolution that talks about.
It's an ordinance.
Excuse me, ordinance. You know what? If you could pass it out, that'd be really helpful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Commissioners, I have multiple copies here of the two enactments that govern this decision-making process. Florida statutes 125.70 through 125.74 govern the appointment of and the duties of the county administrator. And then your own code, sections 2-2-21 through 2-2-24. So yes, I'll pass these out now, and there you go, Ed.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So
Down.
Pass it down so you can call.
okay, excellent, excellent. Let's see. Okay, so we need, Vanessa, I'll take that back for the moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 for the clerk. These are your statutes that govern your deliberations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 for the clerk. And these are your code sections that govern your deliberations. I'll get directly to the point. As each of you is aware at this point, the state statute is silent as to educational credentials of a county administrator. Your ordinance, on the other hand, that has been in place since 1991, largely untouched since 1991. Your ordinance does require, at a minimum, a bachelor's degree for the administrator. It is my opinion that applies whether the administrator is permanent in nature or acting in nature. It is important to use the phrase acting because that's what the statute speaks of, quote-unquote acting administrator as opposed to interim. And thus, if it is my understanding, I have not spoken directly to Ms. Corrier, but it is my understanding that she does not have a college degree, and therefore, if you want to appoint Ms. Corrier as an acting administrator or as a permanent administrator, it will be essential for you to amend your ordinance to eliminate the educational requirement.
I had been told, I've not read this, obviously, it was just handed to us, that there was some latitude in appointing someone on an interim basis if the county administrator were to be leaving in a rapid fashion. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
No, there's no flexibility that I'm aware of.
All right. Well, I have been aware of this issue. I believe that this is something that we can amend to allow this on an interim basis. And I would propose doing so, but I know that that would require a public hearing, right?
Yes, it would be require an advertised public hearing, your standard ordinance process, 10 days advance notice in a local newspaper, and a public hearing to modify your ordinance. Yes.
And again, I think it's very important to have the continuity with staff so they understand. You know, our staff is very independent. That is the way they've operated under Mr. Hunsaker. They've operated, they've been given a lot of power to be able to run their own departments, to be able to do what is expected of them, the policy set by this board. I would like to not see that change in the interim. I'm looking forward to having a new direction, but right now, in the interim, we need to have the continuity, is my opinion.
Okay. Commissioner Ball?
Yeah, I actually had a long conversation with Sherry this morning. I think that she has just done a great job in her position that she has today. We talked about this meeting today. We talked about the future. We talked about a lot of things. And it's tough. You know, I mean, this is a big decision. And no matter what, whether Sherry becomes the interim county administrator today or not, she will definitely be part of the administration, major part of it, because she is a deputy county administrator. She's good at what she does. She has pros and cons, like everybody else, like we all would, that in looking for that. And I do agree that she would probably do a great job. However, I'm going to nominate someone else because I think finance is very important in this position. And just for giggles, for conversation this morning, I'm going to nominate Jan Brewer as the interim candidate. I've not spoken to Jan. She just looked at me like, what? So I'm going to nominate Jan Brewer.
Okay. Commissioner Whitmore?
Well, I'm so far in agreement with some of that have spoken. I agreed that Jan has her strengths and Sherry has her strengths too. Sherry has been with the county for a long time, and as far as she's been in charge of the criminal division of the probation and all that for years, community services network. She's been involved in the whole county at various positions, so I think she's more well-rounded. Jan is excellent fiscally, and I think you need that team to make it work. And who says that Jan wouldn't be possibly, brought up? I mean, I remember, I know you don't like to hear this, when I was mayor, I wanted somebody fiscally because it's all about the budget. So I had our treasurer be in charge when I wasn't there. And because to me it was all, and so everybody reported to him when I wasn't at the mayor's office. So, and it worked well because it is fiscally, it's all about budget. And, but Sherry is very well-rounded. I think we just need to amend our ordinance, and hopefully we can get the majority of the commission to just say and/or comparable education and experience. She's got 30 years with county, I don't even know really, maybe even more. I've seen her, she's tough. I mean, she doesn't come across that way. I've seen her tough dealing with the hospital. Which totally shocked me when she had to meet with the hospital a few times to say, nope, that's not what we're going to do. And I just think she has the experience and the respect of all the directors. She shined when Ed appointed her after Karen left. And Karen left because of the way she was treated by some board members. She said, I've never been treated like this, and I'm going to go and do what I want to do and teach. So she left. And Sherry stepped up, and Ed went out of town, and I remember her and Dan were in charge, and John Barnott for a while. So, and they did a great job. I think Sherry's the leader, and I think she's at least deserved the chance to be the interim director or the administrator until we decide what we're going to do.
Okay. Commissioner Servia.
Thank you. So this is such an important discussion, and I'm really happy that everyone is weighing in. I'm going to tell you that I feel uncomfortable modifying our ordinance to remove the requirement for college graduate. I think that that's a very important requirement, and it's not a reflection at all on Sherry. Sherry is an outstanding leader. I am more impressed with Sherry than ever, having toured her old department, Community Services, recently. I mean, the things that she set up there are just phenomenal, and she's a great, great employee. But I'm not comfortable modifying that standard. I'm just not. I think the idea of Jan Brewer is a very interesting one. I'd like to discuss that a little more and hear what you guys have to say.
Okay. I'm actually next. And I just, for clarification here again, I'd like to hear Attorney Palmer, in amending our ordinance, are we setting a bad precedent? Is this, because this is obviously a policy decision that we have to make? And does it open up other doors that maybe we don't want to open up in the process of doing this, as far as changing it strictly from a educational requirement that was put into that ordinance whenever it was adopted. I don't know, but I'm just curious from a legal standpoint. Do you see anything negative in potentially changing that ordinance?
Good question. Legally, you can change it. Legally, you can eliminate the educational requirements. Again, the statute does not mandate anything one way or the other. I mean, practically speaking, this should be probably a keen sense of the obvious. If you do eliminate the educational requirement, then you certainly open up the field of potential candidates to anybody and everybody. But legally you can do it. It is a business decision for this Board of County Commissioners to make.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ball.
Yeah, just wanted to add something that I forgot to mention earlier. One of the reasons that I've made the nomination that I did is because of the college education. I think it's very important. I had a long conversation with the county attorney on this issue a couple of times. To me, ultimately, this is about who we're going to find to be our county administrator. I don't think in my heart that we need to lower, and I hate to put it this way, but basically what we're doing is lowering our standards if we do change our ordinance. Because right now we do require a college education. I think that's very important for a county administrator. And I really hated finding out what we all know up on this board, that Sherry did not qualify under that ordinance. But I can't help it. It is what it is. I can't change it. And Sherry and I had a long conversation on that. And I'm just not willing to change our ordinance because I think it is extremely important. I think the county administrator obviously is the top person in the administration. The only people that are higher is this board. And I don't think we need to lower our standards for that position. And this is coming from a business sense. I've been in business for over 20 years. And do I think that we can have an interim county administrator without a college education? Yes. But by doing it, you're opening the door for the county administrator position. And that I am just not willing to do. If it's someone temporarily, that's one thing. But on a permanent basis, no. And it's just not right to, I think, lower our standards for these two positions. So in conversation with Sherry, I told her, I said, no matter what happens this morning, please, and I'm looking at her, please, go back to school. She needs 20 hours. Get your degree. Because when this comes up again, she should be at the top of the list. And she's earned it. But I think this college education is not something that we should just mildly decide that we're going to get rid of. I think this position is too important to lower our expectations. So I just wanted to add that because I didn't say it before. And Jan, the reason I nominated Jan, and I'll tell you, Jan and we've had no discussion, but I do believe that with her background, she's the most qualified to take the reins temporarily to move us forward. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioner, I'm very humbled that you nominated me, and I sincerely, I can't tell you how grateful I am you think that much of me. One of the things with the organization I just wanted to bring to your attention, having some solidity in your finance is critical. I would leave me there That's where I would leave me. I really, in my heart, believe that Sherry can do the job for you that you mean for her to do. This is an interim step. The biggest thing in the change with someone leaving is continuity. And the continuity that you have with these directors, they're an excellent team. They work well together. But honestly, I would leave me in finance, and I would nominate Sherry and let her run as interim while you go for your search for the long term. I know you each have in your minds what you want in that permanent administrator, and you have a team that's going to serve you well no matter what. The directors are behind you 100%. It's just in my mind, I would leave me within the finance.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, can I respond? Please, sir. Jan?
Yes, ma'am.
Totally agree with you. Okay? Finance is the most important department in this county. Boom. No doubt about it. And I feel very, very assured that with you at the helm temporarily, and Sherry Courier being, working so closely with you as I know she will, because we've talked about it, you'll be a great team until we can find someone to replace our county administrator. If you should say, no, I'm not going to do it, I'll nominate someone else. But at this point, I think the two of you could keep things going very, very well, because she is a deputy county administrator already. I am not willing to change our ordinance. So we can go with someone that doesn't have necessarily the experience that you have, but I don't know that there's four votes to change the ordinance. And I don't think that with your professionalism that I know you have, I really cannot see you suggesting that we do that. So, on a temporary basis. Thank you.
Commissioner Bellamy.
Yeah, I'm starting to be a little concerned about the tone a little bit here. This is all about performance, or the ability to perform. And I am aware of educational qualifications. I have been around a countless amount of individuals or people that have high level of job performance without college degrees. And I have watched these people excel and take organizations to the next level. So my concern about the college degree is it's not at a high level. No disrespect to anybody that have a college degree, but my concern is job performance and having the ability to keep the team together. Mr. Hunsaker has done an exceptional job of bringing a group of individuals together to make an impact and put the county in a certain position to move forward. My concern would be to take and start removing significant components. We already know we have to go in another direction with Mr. Hunsaker. And Dan actually reached out to me to give me a personal call this weekend. I think we have an opportunity to listen to legal. And what I mean by listen to legal, if we can amend the ordinance, let's look at our options in there and go for it. I struggle with turning my back on known talent. And what I mean by known talent is it's known that Sherry has the ability to make an impact and to get things done. We have seen other organizations in our immediate community and outside our community go on that broad search and spend those funds to take and bring that person in. And this person's going to make a change. And some organizations in our immediate community are still struggling with that right now, not calling any names. I'm concerned if we have an opportunity to embrace talent that's already a part of our organization. I know what you're saying about the education. I've been in education and I strive and I push and everything like that. But that's why we're up here. We're up here to make tough decisions and do what we feel like is best. And in my opinion, at this point, I think we look at amending the ordinance and we embrace our known talent. And right now, Sherry's our known talent, and I think Sherry will have the ability to take and continue to. See, I look for, can you sustain and move forward? And when you make a transition of such. And I think Sherry will have that ability to sustain us and allow us to continue to move forward. That's just me. That's just me. And the last thing I'll say about education, because it's very, very important. But I'm telling you, there's some people out there that will walk circles in job performance around individuals that have college degrees. They'll walk circles around them. And I think we don't turn our back on our known talent, and we embrace them. And we give them opportunity as an interim, and then we come back and see what's next.
Thank you. Commissioner Trace.
I would like to hear from Sherry about the education, why she didn't finish. If she's doing something, I don't know when you would like her to do that, the chairman. And I kind of agree with everything Mr. Bellamy said. And y'all know I try to keep it short and sweet. But we know Sherry can do the job. We know that we would have little or no change right now, and we can continue on, that we have built a good team, and destroying the team over something that we can legally change. And I have this also has bothered me, that we have this as an ordinance. I put a hype on education, but you know, my son's, he didn't go to college, and he's running the business better than I ever did. So there's, you know, and I have a college education, and to be honest with you, it's obsolete now. What I learned in the 70s, nobody's doing anymore. So, you know, the experience you gather as a person doing a job that Sherry has done for 20, 25, I don't know how long she's done it, is also worth consideration. I, too, struggled with this, though, because I don't like to change our you know, requirements. But I still feel that Sherry is the best person for this job today.
Thank you. Commissioner Benak.
Yeah, and I think we're missing the point here. We have an ordinance. It lays out the criteria. I would not propose deleting the requirement for a permanent administrator. However, you look at the ordinance, the way it is written, you have the requirements under Section 222B. We could add subparagraph 5 under that to read, an existing county employee currently serving as an assistant county administrator may be appointed to serve as the acting county administrator for a period of not to exceed a year. That would take out amending the criteria for a permanent administrator, but it would allow us to recognize that we have the talent in-house, and it would have to say something regardless of the above requirements or something that would have to be legally tweaked to note that you don't have to meet that baccalaureate degree requirement if you're currently serving as an acting assistant county administrator. You can serve as the acting administrator regardless of the degree requirements for a period not to exceed a year. And I put that in because I know from the last time we went through this exercise, it isn't as easy as it seems. You know, and we don't know what the talent pool out there is, but I do know, and we have to put our best foot forward in this exercise so that people will want to come here, will want to serve in Manatee County. We need to have this continuity, and we need to be unified in presenting what a great county Manatee County is, what a great staff we have, what a great opportunity this is for someone. And we cannot deviate from that. And I know that's where we kind of went wrong last time. We didn't look that good. And we got to look good as a place for somebody to want to come. And I think to be able to do this, that's what I would recommend, is just adding a subparagraph 5. I'm not an attorney, but I could see something like that being written by our attorney relatively easily, not changing our requirements for what we look for in the permanent county administrator.
We can do that.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Jan, thank you for coming up and saying what you did. And you are totally a rock star in your department. And that's why I made the comments that I did. Also, we can amend the ordinance to say comparable education or experience. And you can even say 30 years, whatever you want. I mean, we could do something with the ordinance later. The last time we did this, we went and looked for somebody last time before Ed decided, oh no, actually Robin voted for him to come back. We picked somebody that works for the county that had the same college education as Sherry, or didn't have a degree. And our recruiter and our attorney didn't catch it. But then we decided this was, we weren't going to do it, and then Robin did her thing, so it all changed. So we didn't catch it the last time that we nominated somebody in-house. And he was with the recruiter, or he was going to be with the recruiter, but it all stopped before we had that opportunity, and we didn't catch it then. And we thought that person also had qualifications. Job performance, I wrote down what you said. Thank you, Reggie. Her job performance is where it is today, or she wouldn't be Deputy County Administrator right now. Keeping the team together is more important than ever. Manatee County is not doing anything wrong right now. We have great ratings in the credit industry. Our operationally, we're doing well. Our clerk of the court, they do audits on all our departments all the time. We're working well. We work well with our business community. We are not, it's like some other governmental agencies that are having issues. Sarasota had issues with their budget last year or the year before. Other governments have major issues. We don't have that. So I agree with what Reggie had said. We've got known talent. We need to keep the team together. And I won't be supporting anyone for interim except for Sherry.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ball?
No, you just didn't take me off.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is probably the appropriate time to point out one other issue with the ordinance, if you will. Quoting from section 2-2-22, paren B little I, quote, a vacancy in the position of county administrator shall be filled only after the position is advertised to the public in a manner to be determined by the Board of County Commissioners. I deem advertising to be equivalent to a notice in a local newspaper. So I'm simply making this point. If you intend to amend your ordinance, or, well, excuse me, if you intend to promote from within without advertising, then this is also an additional section of your ordinance that needs to be removed.
Or we just advertise.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
So, God forbid something were to happen to our county administrator and he could not serve. So we couldn't have an acting county administrator until we went through an advertising process under your reading of this ordinance?
That is correct.
I don't believe that has happened in the past.
It's never happened in the past. We have probably identified a glitch in the ordinance that needs to be modified. But the present scenario that we are facing is not the scenario that you've outlined, Commissioner Benak, clearly. But yeah, if, yeah.
But my point is, and I maybe misunderstood what I was saying, that I believe there have been times in the past where we had a county administrator, and perhaps I don't know the date when this ordinance was signed, I guess it's probably right at the end if I read it.
Dates to 1991.
1991. That perhaps in the past there were times where we had a county administrator step down and somebody serving in an interim. I think that this ordinance is largely silent to the idea of an acting county administrator. I've only read it very quickly, but it is silent to the idea of an acting county administrator. I know that your opinion is it applies to anyone who has that title, but I would say an acting county administrator might be a different situation. I'm not saying that we can't. The problem I have, Mickey, is you're now saying we're precluded from having an acting county administrator. So we would have to go through the advertising, have all these people apply, and then we appoint somebody. I think that would be very disruptive to the process. I'm trying to make the process work.
That's not what he said.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, respectfully, I have said nothing to the effect that we are prohibited from having an acting county administrator.
Unless we advertise for an administrator, which we are going to do. I'm just trying to get the timing straight.
Your ordinance mandates advertising. So if you want to eliminate that requirement, modify your ordinance. Let me say, too, this is probably an appropriate time. This is a critically important legal decision that you are making. What do I mean by that? The county administrator is vested with all kinds of authority by way of various ordinances and resolutions that have been passed over the years, contract signing authority. The last thing you want to happen is to appoint either an acting or permanent administrator contrary to your ordinance and his or her actions to be challenged
We know.
as ultra vires. We have litigated this very question in the past, where employees in this government have been accused of acting in an ultra vires fashion. So the last thing you want to do is to expose yourself to a situation where you have violated your own ordinance and the administrator's capacity to make certain decisions, to execute certain documents is called into question. I urge you not to do that.
Well, I will tell you, having worked at this county, I am aware that the county has had acting county administrators in the past. I know Karen Jackson Sims was an acting county administrator when I served here, and I guarantee that we did not go out and advertise for an acting county administrator when she was appointed that. So I don't know how somebody might have read this differently in the past, but I do know we've had acting county administrators while we were in the process of searching for a new county administrator. So I guess this is perhaps and that's fine, a very strict reading that it also applies to acting county administrators, and I understand your position, but it has been done in the past, so.
You messed up.
Mr. Hunsaker, you're next up.
Thank you, members of the board. The chairman and I had a conversation several weeks ago about this retirement. And in that meeting, it was suggested that March 1st would be the date. I concurred that March 1st is a good date. You have 3 board meetings between now and that date. You have ample opportunities to amend the ordinance in any way you choose. If you were to make somebody an acting or interim county administrator, you could do that effective March 1, and you have time between now and then to take any action you want relative to your ordinance. It doesn't have to be decided today. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
However, Mr. Chair, if I may, what must be decided today is whether or not this board is going to instruct my office to get to work crafting a new ordinance. That decision must be made today.
Correct.
In terms of timing.
Yes.
Guy should have seen
Commissioner
this.
Ball.
Yeah, I feel like I should have popcorn. Bottom line is, we have a county attorney. We should listen to him. Maybe it's not everything you want to hear, but that's his opinion. So at least try to make sure you do that right. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. From what I've gathered and listened to here, I think for the purposes of this agenda item, what we're talking about is changing the ordinance. There seems to be a consensus there that there is a glitch in the ordinance and that we need to do it for, 2 things is to address the advertising part of it, to make compliance, so whatever that Latin term was that you used, we're not in violation of one of those horrible things.
Aye.
And, and secondly, apparently the consensus seems to be that, I guess, to look at the educational requirements and put in there as far as educational requirements for a acting county administrator, that there is some credit for time served or experience. Personally, I think, we need to have a little more discussion on that. I just don't, I'm not sure that's good policy. Because then I think, you really open it up to any people, out there in the staff that want to now apply for the job. I will say, I've only had one person from the staff talk to me about this position, and that was Sherry. And we had a great conversation. I didn't have any other applicants that came in. But perhaps they felt that they would not be qualified because of the educational requirement. So potentially we will have some other people that may want to now step up and be considered for it. So I think that's the downside, or maybe the upside in changing that educational requirement. But I think that's something that, we should not take lightly, if you will. So Commissioner Trace, I think, is up next.
As I said, I would like Sherry to address the education, if that's possible.
Absolutely. Sherry, if you'd like to come down.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yes, let me address it. And first off, let me also say I regret you're in this position, that you have to be discussing this decision that was part of my life about 30 years ago. Well, a little bit longer than that, back in 1981. However, I do want to also thank you for taking the time to allow me to come in and speak with each of you to go through my work experience. I also want to make sure that the members that are here, both the directors and the citizens, know that for each position with the county that I have been in, I've been fully qualified with work experience and education. I have about 3.5 years of education from Indiana University, very proud of that in the criminal justice arena. Fell short of my last semester. As I went home, we had a little health issue at home with my father, and so I was offered a job, stayed home, been working ever since. Very proud of the work I've done. Thank you for giving some credit to work experience. And also, though, I do understand that you have a very big role to play in this decision, the biggest role, and it's unfortunate that you have to debate this. I apologize for that. I think the county the department directors, I've spoken to them. And I also feel they'd like the continuity. They'd like the opportunity to continue to serve you, to serve the community. They'd like to be able to keep moving forward while you decide and debate the qualifications and the skill level that you see in a county administrator. I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve now in whatever capacity I can be helpful. I think you know my responsibilities have been elevated to the deputy county administrator. I am fully qualified for that position. I'd like to make that clear to everyone. And I'd like to say that in whatever capacity, I think Mr. Hunsicker has been, there's been a couple occasions since I took the position where I have been in charge. I believe there is a process for when he is not available, when he is not able to serve at that moment, and your current 2 deputy county administrators have acted in that role. So with that, I hope you have some confidence that as you debate the decision, that I understand it's difficult, I understand it's a change, and I would certainly respect and honor whatever choice you make.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Carol?
Okay, demonstrates nothing but class. No matter what happens, I've seen you up here with very tough presentations for some very tough questions from commissioners that probably didn't need to be coming this way in the past, and you've handled it well. I'm 15 to 20 hours short of my BS. I got elected as mayor, and I just couldn't do 3 jobs at once, so I'm short too, and look where I am today. I agree with Reggie. And we're all going to be respectful up here, please. We're all going to be respectful. We're not going to talk down to people. I think those days are over. And we are going to do the job of the county, and our interpersonal relationships on the board here need to stop, and we need to work together. Mr. Chair, I agree with you, the comparable education and experience, but what I would do is just put that into the ordinance. But you could also at least 15 to 20 years of comparable education and experience, because that eliminates a lot of people. I don't think we should, I don't care if we're here for 3 or 4 or 5 days. We were here for 18 hours for the Mosaic hearings, and that wasn't pleasant. We did it a few days in a row, but that's our job. And if we can find somebody out there that has us, there's people in this audience here that don't have a college education. I agree with Reggie. Sometimes you just can't get there, and I understand what happened to you. It happened to me too. So I have an AS degree, but that would never get me to be the administrator. Not that I would want it. But you got class, Jan, thank you. I think you guys would be a good team together. I think Sherry deserves this chance. She's worked many years. She didn't ask for it. She didn't ask to be the deputy county administrator. Ed approached her, and when Karen left, under duress, and here we are today. And she's taken the helm and done well. So I think she's got the respect of everybody here today, and that's why they're here. And I think we need to do what we can to recognize the people that stand out, that have good job performance, that can pull a team together and get things done that nobody else can, and she's proven that throughout the years. So this is our known talent. And just because she's 15 hours short, maybe she can make a commitment to do it online somehow, to get those 15 hours by the time the year is up, which Betsy had suggested, and then she would qualify for it. Maybe there's something maybe that can be done there if we think she's done a good performance and she's done a good job in a year. So I just think you deserve a lot of respect, and thank you.
Okay, Betsy?
Yeah, I do find it interesting that we went through this whole process, and to my knowledge, this is the first time I've seen this ordinance.
Yeah.
You know, probably would have been good information to have the last time.
I think
we
it was
decided
in
to
our
go
book.
through this.
It was in our
For
recruitment
what it's
book.
worth, my office had zero involvement in the last
Yeah,
administrative
but you
search.
still should have given our
Zero
ordinance.
involvement.
Apparently, it's very, very important. But yeah, I'm
Not that we wanted to, by the way. We were happy to
okay. Well,
have no involvement.
okay.
Nobody did
Now
that.
we have another opportunity to get it right, to do this the right way, and to look at this ordinance, which was created as a policy of the board, and it can be changed. We can debate what is appropriate, even with and not have to agree 100% what is the requirement, or even what legal's advice is. We have to make decisions. That's what we're elected for. What I would like to see, as I said before, is under item number B, which is the educational requirements, I would like to add subparagraph 5, which would state, notwithstanding the above educational requirements, an existing county employee currently serving as a deputy county administrator may be appointed to serve as the acting county administrator for a period not to exceed 1 year. That would be my motion. The reason I'm making that motion is because it would not change the educational requirements for the permanent county administrator. It would also really limit the potential field of who would be qualified. I've not had discussion with anyone other than Sherry and Dan about this. So if there's somebody else that wants to serve, I'm not aware of them in county staff, and we've had a lot of discussion about transition in the past. So that would be my motion.
Can you explain it? Because
I will second for discussion.
Thank you. Okay, what I'm doing is looking at the ordinance, giving direction to staff, or to the county attorney to draft this up, to add this subparagraph 5 under B. So you have section 2-222. B is where, in the subparagraphs 1, 2, 3, 4, it lists all of the educational requirements. Under that, I would add a 5, which would only address an acting, I want to make sure I'm using acting county administrator. And it would say that notwithstanding the above educational requirements, which are in 1, 2, 3, and 4, that an existing county employee currently serving as a deputy county administrator, I think we only have
two.
May be appointed to serve as the acting county administrator a period of not to exceed 1 year. So it would give us the ability to appoint Sherry as an acting. The other thing, the advertising thing, I'm going to leave that to the county attorney to fix. I don't even know where it is, and I'm not going to.
Sure, we can fix that. The effect of this, however, assuming the ordinance is modified along the lines that you just articulated, Commissioner Benak, is that Ms. Courier would not be qualified to become your permanent county administrator.
Right.
Only
That's what
interim.
I want to ask.
Only interim.
That's correct. Not without a degree. And I heard from the folks that said that they thought the degree was important. It's interesting. I think when we went out for the advertising the last time, we debated this. I don't know where we landed, to tell you the truth. I can't remember if we landed on a paragraph that said, or other, experience. We perhaps did the whole thing. Violation of our ordinance last time, not sure. But just pointing that out. I can't remember. Maybe somebody else up here could remember that.
Well, the only violation would have been had you ultimately hired an administrator that didn't possess a college degree.
Okay. Well, that was my thought, that, and.
Okay.
Can I?
Misty?
So we have a motion on the floor in a second.
Yeah, you can
And I
discuss
thank
your
Betsy
three.
very much for that input. I think it's excellent. I just would like to say that we are a board that is required to set policy aside and apart from personalities. Because I think that we all agree that there is no one better than Sherry to do this. I think we all agree with that. But I want to just remind everyone, we are not a small town. We are a very big county. And we can't reduce our requirements, in my opinion, requiring that education. It is important. I disagree with Priscilla. I think it's a very important part of who will eventually become our county administrator. But thank you, Betsy, for that, for the new language. I think it's good.
Vanessa?
Yeah, Misty, thank you. I was going to say the same thing. If you go back to what I said in the beginning about Sherry, it was that I wish she had the college degree. And I say that because, in my opinion, I think the college degree for a county administrator is very important. And I think we're being shallow to not realize that. I do like Betsy's motion, because I do know, and I said before, I know that Sherry can do the job as an interim county administrator. She could do the job as the county administrator. But we have qualifications that this board needs to abide by. You want to change it? Okay. I voted for the second. Change it. But at least, I think we should realize, as Misty said, it's very important, this is not a small county. So I don't think any of us up here on this board can compare our experience in business and those that have never owned a business to boot with a corporation this large, or not a corporation, but a government of this size with over 1,800 employees that has the budget that this one has. It's not a simple task. I probably, my business, I've been around for over 20 years. And I don't have a college degree, but I don't manage or own a business of this size and this dimension with a budget of this size either. So, I think it's a very important task that we have. I think that we need to take it seriously. And we need to make sure that we get qualified personnel to take over this county as the administrator. And, you talk about keeping continuity. Well, I don't think anybody ever said anything about not having continuity. Jan and Sherry would make a great team in running this county on an interim basis. That is continuity. That's not bringing anybody from the outside to take over. So, let's not be shallow in our thinking or in our comments. I think that we're all up here wanting to do the best for the county, wanting to make the best decisions for this county that we possibly can. There's 7 of us. We're not going to all agree on how that's done, nor are we supposed to. We are not here to be in a clique. We're here to make independent decisions. And that's what we need to do. So I'm good. Never said Sherry couldn't do the job. In fact, she knows that from my conversation this morning. But the college education to me is very important. But I will support, and I did second the motion that Commissioner Benak made. Thank you.
Reggie?
All right, so I just looking at the ordinance, and just bear with me. This is B up under section 2-2-222. A lot of twos there. My mom's born on February 22nd, so that's 22. All right. The county administrator shall be qualified by an administrative and executive experience and ability to serve as chief administrator for the county and shall meet one or more of the following requirements. So me, unless I'm misunderstanding something. In number 4, right? It says graduation from an accredited college or university with a bachelor's degree and recent appropriate senior management, local or regional government experience as may be established by subsequent action of majority of the Board of County Commissioners. Am I missing?
No.
Am I missing something?
Oh, my gosh.
So we have an opportunity based in number 4, am I correct?
Yes?
Because this now this is our current ordinance, am I right? And I haven't read
Yes, sir.
all of it.
Experience, yeah.
I haven't read all of it, but I just want to tarry there for a little bit to make sure I have a clear understanding of our options. So can y'all just give me a minute to talk to legal about this? And just bear with me, sir. So just looking at it, it talks about the graduation from an accredited college or university with the bachelor's degree in recent appropriate senior management, local or regional government experience. Now, when we're talking about regional, and this is just Reggie, when we're talking about regional, I mean, there's no closer than right here up on our own umbrella. All right? So where it says, and I just want to make sure I understand it. If you say, Reggie, you're way off, I'll stand down. But I think there's an opportunity here because she has regional government experience because she's been employed for us as a many, I'm not necessarily sure, so I don't want to misquote the number of years, and may be established by subsequent action of a majority of the Board of County Commissioners. So I think, oh, God help me, please. I think we are creating issues for ourselves that are not really there. In my opinion, because and again, I do understand the education component. I think the big concerns from Mr. Chair is that we don't want to open up a practice or anything like that where we're making amendments and everything like that. I don't know whether or not we have to amend this.
Advertise.
I don't know whether or not we have to amend it unless I'm misinterpreting, and that's why I want to hear from you, sir.
Certainly. It is my legal opinion that if you wish to appoint Sherry Corrier as an interim, or excuse me, as an acting county administrator, you must modify your ordinance. So let me be clear on my opinion, okay? Now, the original drafter of this ordinance could have easily included language to say, or option 4, no degree requirement, okay? But the degree requirement language remains even in option 4. I interpret the language established by subsequent action of a majority of the Board of County Commissioners. I interpret that language to be descriptive of the senior management or regional government experience. I do not interpret that language as being descriptive of the degree requirement. Okay? Am I making sense? The degree requirement is there, even in subsection 4. So
that's why I had a concern with or, because when you, it's and, you know, it connects together. But when we're talking about or, you know, I can have an apple or an orange, but I still have something to eat. So I'm
it is local or regional. Local or regional, as may be established by subsequent action of the Board of County Commissioners. That's my interpretation of the word or. Local or regional. It is not my interpretation that the bachelor's degree requirement is somehow eliminated by that language.
Okay, that's why I asked.
Yes, that is not my interpretation.
Mr. Clegg, would you like to weigh in on this, or see you haunting us back there in the back of the room?
Good morning, and I apologize for haunting. Assistant County Attorney Bill Clegg. I have to agree with my boss on this. This is not something you can take chances on. If a judge disagrees, you could have an ultra vires act on your hands. It could be a high dollar decision that is subject to legal challenge. So you have to be conservative. And you have to be safe, because even if you don't accept the county attorney's interpretation. A judge could disagree with you. You've got 4 separate provisions. Each lists a degree requirement. So you look at the overall intent. It looks like it means they have to have a degree. And if a judge says that and somebody doesn't, and they sign something that could be millions of dollars, it's no different if you're in a corporate context where you appoint a CEO to act on behalf of that corporation or bank, and a judge concludes they don't meet the qualifications of your articles of incorporation, you're in big trouble. And it is not that difficult to amend the ordinance. That is something we can do within the time frame that you're looking at by March 1. It's a far safer and more prudent thing to do than take a chance by trying to interpret your way around this requirement. We cannot advise you to do that, given the amount of money that could be at stake.
That's why I asked.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg.
You're welcome.
Carol.
First of all, my thoughts and comments, I don't presume them to be shallow. They're my thoughts and comments. So I'm not gonna tolerate this anymore. Sherry, I gotta ask a question. You know, this terminology, good try. But, I mean, I know, I saw or, and I thought, well, maybe that's why the recruiter didn't say anything when we did appoint somebody.
Let me be clear, Commissioner
Commissioner
Bellamy's inquiry was very insightful.
Mickey, wait.
Very insightful, yes.
Mickey, okay,
My apologies for interrupting.
thank you. Maybe that's why the recruiter, when we looked the last time and we did put somebody as a candidate who had the same qualifications as Sherry, maybe that's why I was thinking maybe that's how they interpret it, because this never got brought to our attention. And you would think the interpreter would, the person that we hired would have looked at our looked at our ordinance. So, I mean, that's disappointing to hear that. Now, the motion that goes today, you're 15 hours short. Have you contacted your school at all? Or
I've contacted the school. I have my transcripts. I've reviewed them. I've contacted USF, Sarasota Manatee. They have a similar degree program. I would not want you to make a decision based on some sort of a promise or suggestion on my part. I certainly am going to pursue it. But it is still not been decided what credits transfer. I'm sure we've all been in that situation. Which credits transfer, which do not. So I ultimately do not have, a hard clad amount of information that I can tell you about it, but I have spoken with them. They're reviewing it. I have a meeting with them. I do plan to follow through with trying to determine what that process should be. And I would say, when Mr. Hunsaker asked me if I would be willing to step forward, I brought this to the attention of the administrator and brought forward the Florida statute, brought forward the local ordinance. I read it. I understood it to be as the county attorney has mentioned to you, and however, I do agree I would not have put you in this position or continued if I didn't think that currently the position that I hold, the experience that I have, the past experience with 28 different county commissioners, 4 different county administrators, 3 different acting county administrators, and it gave me a chance to retrace my 30 years, 23 activations for emergencies. Qualifies me to help you and the staff and the departments during the interim process, if it's possible, through some method legally, that can be done. I feel I can be of benefit to you to assure them, all of the 1,800 members of this great Manatee County government and the departments, that we can do it together.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Betsy.
Thank you, Sherry, and I have no doubt that you can take the reins and lead this government forward with minimal disruption, which is my goal. And again, spending a little time reading this, it did have the language that I asked about earlier about, in the case, it's actually subparagraph G, where the office of county administrator shall be deemed vacant if the incumbent is removed, resigns, moves his residence from the county, or is by death, illness, or other cause unable to continue in office. Resigns. I mean, you know.
He's resigning.
Yeah.
Early.
So it says, a vacancy in the office shall be filled in the same manner as the original appointment. And then it says the Board of County Commissioners may appoint an acting county administrator in the case of vacancy or temporary absence or disability until a successor has been appointed and qualified, or the administrator returns. I guess the legal staff presumably have read this and have, their opinion is that that doesn't mean we can appoint somebody without going through all these other hoops and all the other requirements. Kind of wonder what the language is in there for. And I know that I'm just seeing this for the first time today. But I guess if you support my motion, it certainly is, just makes it maybe more clear. But it did seem to envision this possibility that we're faced with right now, so.
Okay, thank you.
Let me say there is an inconsistency between the language that you just read and the mandatory advertising language that appears in subsection I. Those are inconsistent.
Yeah.
And if you instruct my office to amend the ordinance today, we'll clean that up.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, personally, I'm kind of an education snob, you know, but with all due respects to Mr. Zuckerberg and Mr. Jobs, they did pretty well without college degrees, I think, out there in the world.
They didn't have a college degree?
Huh?
They didn't have a college
No,
degree?
neither one of them.
Oh.
So with that, you know, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
I would like the motion to be read again, please.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the clerk, so we'll see if we're close.
See if she can read it, and then we'll open it up to public comment.
Motion was made by Commissioner Benak, seconded by Commissioner Baugh, to add subparagraph in section 2-22-2, parent B, parent 5, notwithstanding the above educational requirements, an existing employee currently serving as a deputy county administrator may be appointed as acting county administrator for a period not to exceed 1 year. So it has some extra words.
Yeah, and subject to legal modification, they can legalize.
Yes, we
whatever.
might tweak that a little bit to include, for example, language to the effect of regardless of educational credentials, for example. Yeah.
That's important.
Okay. Seconder, good with that?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open for public comment.
Sandy Marshall, First Vice President of the Federation of Manatee County Community Associations. It seems like every time I come up here lately, I've got something in my throat. If there's any one thing I can tell you after being 50 years a trial lawyer and appellate lawyer, you better listen to your county attorney. We recently learned the importance of getting a legal opinion. When I appeared here not too long ago and requested it, it was obtained, and it confirmed that partially what I was trying to warn the county about was correct. And so, again, do not disregard what Mr. Clegg, he's a very competent lawyer, and Mr. Palmer has told you. You want to go over to the courthouse and play around with the judicial system and find out what kind of decision you'll get, take that kind of language over there and you'll find out. I got a law office that's filled with books that I'll actually donate to you if you want, that prove why all those books are in that office. You go to the law library. You get two judges, you get two different opinions. That's one of the first rules I learned when I went through law school. So don't mess around with it. Secondly, I think this, you don't lower your standards when your county grows from when I moved here in 51, it was 23,000 people up to, we're going to be approaching 500,000 people within the next 3 or 4 years. We're at 370. During the season, we're probably at 500,000 people. This is no game for amateurs to put a county administrator up here. Mr. Hunsinger has proven his worth. And all the time I've been here, I've seen one other administrator that comes close to what he did was Ernie Padgett. He did a great job. He was a former county commissioner. He came in here and did an excellent job. He built the reserves that you lived on for the last 10 years. And so you got to get somebody in there that can do the job. You also have to look at this too. I have a list of who you had at the last go-around by your search team. And if you'll notice, there was 3 or 4 that were in there that were employees that were promoted. They lasted 2 or 3 years and they're out looking for a job. You have to look at the fact that you want to hire somebody that you can see an expectancy of at least 8 to 10 years. If you can't do that, don't hire them. I don't care how good they are, whether they're from within or without. So I'll put together a letter to send to you to outline some thoughts for you on this. And we'll be happy to try to give input. This is an area, that I've had and the Federation's had considerable experience with to try to help give you guidance and help the county attorney as we've done in the past. So you're going in the right direction. I think the amendment that's being proposed has merit because, like Mrs. Benek pointed out, it's got confusion. But don't ignore the law, folks. There's an easy way to fix anything. The hard way is to go across the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, very much. Is there anybody else from the public who'd like to speak at this time? If so, please come down. Not seeing anybody. We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing nobody, the motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the county administrator recruitment process. So here we go again. Only been about a year.
We just bought ourselves a year.
And
He has a question.
oh, sorry, Vicki. Absolutely. We'll adjourn or take a break for 10 minutes. Is that good? Okay, we'll be back at 10:22 a.m.
I like walking a little bit.
It was me.
Yeah, that's fine.
He said amateurs, I'm not going to deal with amateurs.
Okay, we're going to start the second agenda item. Prior to that, Mr. Marshall just would like 1 minute of time at the podium so he can get home and get out of the germs.
Right. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I had two people approach me after the meeting here that we just had, indicating that I had insulted Sherry Corrier by my comments that this is not a game for amateurs. And I didn't make any mention of names, and I'd like to make it clear. I learned a valuable lesson years ago from a person that had a habit of doing things like that. And he finally said to me one day, he says, Sandy, he says, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And so I want to make it clear, if I have any disagreements with anybody that we're going to be nominated for our county commission or county administrator, I'll speak to that at that time, and I'll do it in an appropriate way, and I can assure you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item is the county administrator recruitment process. Like I said earlier, here we go again. The purpose here is for us to get a consensus as to how we want to move forward on this. The big issue or question before us, I think, is whether we want to go back, rehire a new or a recruitment firm to come in and assist us in this process like we did the last time. If we can come to some consensus on that, then we can then perhaps in the near term have a work session as to setting the boundaries, but I'd like to see if we can't get some, again, lively conversation up here on, what are some of the hot buttons there. So with that, I'd like Rodney to please come up and maybe update everybody, because I know I was not aware of what the status is at this point in time with what's left over from last year, if you will.
Thank you. Rod Barnes, Director of Human Resources. You may recall that back in 2017, April, May of 2017, we embarked on a search for the county administrator. And at that time, we had engaged in a contract with Springstead Waters and Company. And now we had used that company before, but we had secured a contract with Springstead and Waters for the purposes of conducting this previous county administrator search. Now, we had used them in a prior search, and so when we did this, knowing that we would have different opportunities to conduct searches, we had engaged in a contract with them for a period of 3 years to provide executive search services for us. So we're still within that 3-year contract that we had, agreement that we had signed with them. Obviously, we would need to re-engage with them and set up the parameters for a new search and cost out whatever services you wanted to include in that search. That agreement that we did secure with Waters, Springstead and Waters and Company, was done through an RFP, through a national search, and we had reviewed a number of companies and had landed on Springstead Waters and Company. Now, I would say that, obviously, the first thing you would want to do is decide, do you want to engage with an executive search firm to go out and do a search, or do you have some other thoughts in mind as to how you want to go about that? But I don't want you to get locked in on specifically what that experience was last time, because the process can be whatever you decide and however you want to design it. I think my job is to bring forward the options and sort of the opportunities and sort of the resources that are available to you. We did go with Springstead and Waters last time because of some of the innovative approaches that they took. You may recall we did video interviewing. You may recall we did a profile assessment where you got to express what are the strengths and weaknesses and the characteristics that you're looking for in a county administrator, and we were able to analyze those factors with all of the candidates that we brought forward. You may recall that the last search that we did produced approximately 100 applicants. You got a master list of all of those applicants. We went through a process of screening those down to 10 desired candidates that we spent time going through, and before we finalized that decision, the board decided to not appoint and select, but to keep the current administrator. So this process can be, whatever you want it to be. We can bring the ideas and resources to the table. You can decide how you want to go about that. I know one of the other factors was how do you get community input, and there's a variety of ways you can do that also. So essentially, if you decide you want to go down that road again, we would bring back the search firm to sit with the board to go through what that process and timeline might look like. That would be an opportunity for you to decide what are those characteristics you're looking for, what is it that you want us to be searching for, how do you want us to define that search, and then we can map out a timeline depending on what sort of process and tools and resources you want to include in that.
Okay, thank you, Rodney. Commissioner Whitmore.
And before I make my comment, I don't know if we finished the last item. Vicki had asked us to give direction on, I know Betsy made her motion, but about item number I, if that needed to be worked. So we need to talk about that at the end, maybe whether he needed to change the terminology or whatever that was in it, or if it even needed to be in it. Done smiling? Okay. I don't think we were impressed with the candidates that came before us at the last go-around, and I remember sitting next to Steve at the last one, and we weren't happy with even the ones we narrowed down. So I don't know, and all companies do video interviews now, even for nursing everywhere. I mean, everybody does that now, so that's innovative maybe 20 years ago, but I mean, everybody does it now, and I'm sure you do it probably too. So I would prefer to see what the commission feels about maybe find a different recruiting company. I just wasn't impressed with them, and you did give us a master list, and we did get down to the final 10 or 20, whatever it was, and we did, we had the opportunity, and I just wasn't impressed, and I think we were all frustrated, and that's why some of us nominated people that worked within the county.
Okay, Commissioner Benak.
Yeah, I was interested to see where we stood with that firm that we had hired before, and this is such an important decision for this county. I don't know if there are best practices we should be learning about. We talked about also working with the Florida Association of Counties. They had a process for helping you find a county administrator. I don't think we went through that last time, but I think we probably should this time. We have a little bit of time. We're all on the same page. We know we want to get somebody who's going to work well with our existing staff, and our staff just keeps growing younger and younger and younger. We've really been able to bring in a lot of young millennials and really make some changes in this county. So I don't know enough about the group that we had at this time to say that we should stay with them or not. I am concerned about the money we spent. I'm always going to be concerned on behalf of the county of the money we spent and whether or not we can have savings if we stay with this group versus what it'll cost us to start from the very beginning. I would like to know that. So I don't know if we can give you enough direction. Maybe we need to have another work session on this before we decide where we can go. But it just seems to me that you can't just keep doing things the same old way. We've got to do things differently because we're, third fastest growing county in the state, 10th fastest county growing in the nation, so many great things going on and challenges. We just really need to figure out what's the best way to reach out to find the best person to take over this incredible job.
Okay, Commissioner Servia?
Again, I agree with a lot of what Betsy just said, and I don't understand why our list of applicants the last time was less than stellar. And if anyone can provide insight to that, I mean, was it a reflection of how the county was functioning together with the board at the time? Maybe it isn't a reflection on the past recruiting firm, but I will be looking for the best recruiting firm to find the best candidates, and if you can help us understand what our options are and how much money it's going to cost us. I'm also going to be someone who's going to want community input, so I'll be very interested if a firm can provide that as well.
If I can just jump in a minute. So again, you had this search firm brought 100 applicants to the table. The direction that the search firm got from you all was to work through a screening process. The search firm had met with you to try to get agreement on what were the characteristics, what were the types of things that you desired, so that we could save you a lot of effort and time to go to paring that 100 candidates down to a reasonable number. You decided that you wanted that number to be the top 10. We did provide you with the list of applicants. You had the opportunity to review every applicant that was there, whether you chose to do that or not, or simply only looked at the 10 and then decided you didn't like the 10 that were brought to the table. You had the opportunity to go back and say, we don't like the 10, let's decide on another 10. You had quite a pool of people there to choose from. You just didn't choose to go back to the pool, and before we got to getting to a point of making a decision, the board decided to go in a different direction. You'd have to remember back then what was going on back then too. That was, we were closing in on September. Hurricane Irma showed up. There was a lot of emotion on this board. Difficulty to get agreement on everything, and so there was a lot of public sessions, a lot of public meetings, a lot of public disagreement that was getting out. And I think, as Commissioner Benak said earlier this morning, this is an opportunity now to put our best foot forward and to market Manatee County in a positive light. And I'm optimistic that circumstances would be different this go around.
Commissioner Trace?
I would just like us to have a list of options of where we can go, what they would cost, either through the Florida Association of Counties, a headhunter, Florida Association of Administrators, and maybe even one or two people maybe in the business that have an option. So that's what I would like to say. What are our options on choosing one? I know we chose the headhunter last time, and I know most of the people that are sitting here weren't real happy with that, but I don't remember having a lot of options at the time either.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we have. I think we know we're moving, but I don't think we feel pressured to do something very, very quickly. And so I would like to know what our options are before we actually pick one out. I don't want to just say this is our only option. It's got to be more than one way.
Okay, a couple questions, Ronnie. One, is there any financial obligation outstanding now with the existing headhunting firm that we have under contract? We've satisfied their fee that I assume we paid them last year, and so even though we're under contract, we're not under any financial obligation to them.
No, sir. We're not under any financial obligation. The total cost of that contract to do the search with all of the deliverables through the appointment of the county administrator was about $19,500 was the amount of that contract. We didn't reach the end of that contract because the deliverable wasn't delivered, and we only got to certain phases of that contract before we got to the finalist interviews and ultimate decision. So only a portion of that contract was paid, but we're paid up with that contract. That's no longer any outstanding cost associated with that contract. If you decided you wanted to engage in a different process, we'd have to talk with them about, what those services might cost if you decided to do something different or more involved than what we did last time. I can't promise that it'll be $19,500, but it just depends on what those services are.
Just secondly, I think, based on the experience that we went through last year with me, I would personally prefer to go back out and look at some other search firms. I did have an opportunity to read through the FAC thing that they put out, where they will, do all the work for you as well. It's a very voluminous, whatever you want to call it, paper that they put out, marketing material, whatever. But I thought it was very interesting, and I think that they had in there as an example the search they did for Port Lucie County, I think that it was called. And I thought they, certainly were probably a good source. So I think, again, personally, I think I'd like to, see if we could get another list of potential search firms to work with and kind of go through there and make a selection from them. As you say, we do have some time in the process, but conversely, again, speaking personally, an acting administrator's great, but till you get the permanent one, you still have that uncertainty from a staff level. And it would be good, as Betsy said, this is a huge decision for the next 8 to 10 years, hopefully. And, we don't want to make any mistakes in that area. And, I'm going to stay optimistic that we, have we've got some new members on the board, and everything will go a little smoother than it did a year ago. And that we'll be able to find that person from wherever it is, and hopefully those people, as they, look at the opportunity here, which again I think is the best opportunity in the country to come to a place like Manatee County with its growth, its opportunities, thanks to the leadership that we've had under Mr. Hunsaker. Financially we're, in good shape, absent another catastrophic economic event, but even with that, I think we're, can probably limp through it because of where we're at. So I would think, the pool of candidates that are available out there to us now should be better than what they were a year ago. And I'd be terribly disappointed if they weren't, quite frankly. So that's just, that's my opinion. I think the direction I would give you, subject to the how the rest of the board feels, is, we'll set up a work session and have you, look at other outfits or other companies that maybe could provide this service to Manatee County, and then we can sit down and have the discussion as to what we're looking for. And I think we all have our own ideas there, like we did last time, and we'll try to whittle them down to a manageable criteria, for the new administrator coming in. But I don't. Let's see. Oh, I do have someone. Betsy.
Yeah, and it occurs to me that we're not alone in going through this process. Other counties have been through this recently, and maybe finding out, what they learned or how they did it, or, trying to research a little bit, what other counties are out there today looking for someone. My recollection is we had a lot of folks that were in transition the last time we went through that. I don't know if they've settled with somebody, but it would be good information to me, I think, to know what some of their experiences were, how long it took them to find someone, maybe who they used. It would just be good. This is government. We're not unique. There's 67 counties, and I think some of the other ones are probably going through it, and just would like to know a little bit about that, what they experienced.
Commissioner Serbia.
You know, it's funny. You keep saying what I'm thinking.
Maybe
I will tell you that Escambia County is currently looking for a county administrator right now. And so I know that that's one county that I thought that we could contact and ask them who they're using and what they're doing and how it's going. But yes, great comments, Betsy.
Okay, anybody else? So I think the only, I guess, thing is whether there is a consensus. I don't think it's a motion, but maybe just, to ask Rodney to go out and widen his scope of potential firms to hire and basically to give notice to the firm that we currently have under contract that, we will be looking at other options. Commissioner Ball.
I think one place that we should probably look right off the bat is through FAC. I think that they would, they have a department there that, I don't know, department's the right word, of county administrators. And I know that your county administrator had mentioned once before going through FAC. So I would think that should maybe be one of the first places that we should probably look. Thanks.
Misty?
And I think that that's a great suggestion, but I think it's also good to go to the National Association of Counties and get their input as well. I don't want to just limit it to the state of Florida.
You're correct.
Last time we did.
Agreed.
Commissioner Benak?
Yeah, if you could perhaps just send us a link to that FAC paper. I remember being in Tallahassee last year and asking them for it. And perhaps they gave it to me, and perhaps it's somewhere in my office.
I have it in my office. Yeah.
That's entirely possible.
We all got
it. But if you have a link or something.
I'll forward it to all y'all.
Okay. Yeah. That would be good. And, I don't know about, I don't have any problem with letting, if this is necessary, letting the group that we currently have know that we're not going to continue. But I wonder if, I don't know. I don't know how many firms there are out there. I don't know if I wasn't happy either but maybe it was not so much the firm as the timing where we were utilizing the firm. So I don't know if I want to automatically say they cannot be possibly.
No, I think they can reapply. I just want to terminate the existing contract.
Okay. Again, I don't know if there's any economies of keeping with them or not. So that was the only concern that I had.
Okay. Commissioner Whitmore?
Just a question. Misty mentioned national. I think we looked at it last time, and I'm not sure. Didn't we just we recommended or we asked for Florida because how they do it in California and New York? I don't know if that's how they do it in Florida. Did we do it nationally? I can't remember. We did. Did we, Rodney?
Yes, it was a national search.
All right, and that's where we want to go this time? Okay.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, don't discount the possibility of appointing a panel of local citizens, as opposed to going the executive search firm route. I harken back to when I was chosen as your county attorney. There was no search firm involved other than to do the background checks, but it was a panel of local citizens that was appointed by the Board of County Commissioners to weed through the resumes, narrow down the top-tier candidates. So that's another. As long as you are brainstorming in terms of options, you probably shouldn't completely discount the possibility of appointing what I would call a blue ribbon panel to do it for you, and then bring you the top list of candidates.
Misty?
Thank you. Just to respond to comments from Carol and from our attorney, I think it's important that we cast the net very wide at first. While there's an advantage to hiring someone who has experience in the state of Florida, I don't think that it's necessary. It's the only person that we can hire. And I look at the example standing before us right there. We would have never found Rodney had we limited ourselves to Florida and people that know Florida law, and he's outstanding. So,
From
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Okay.
Worked on the Reagan administration, has the best resume I've seen in quite a while. So I would say let's cast the net far and wide at first, and then we'll begin the process to whittle things down. Thank you.
Betsy?
Yeah, we're in such a unique, interesting time of growth, and we talk a lot about it up here and the challenges, but in some ways they're just getting bigger as we deal with things like climate change, and urbanization. We've been urbanizing so quickly. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people want us to stay where we were, but the challenges are changing. So we definitely need to look wider, I think. And I like the idea of getting input from maybe the millennial group. It's a question of how. It's a little bit different than picking the county attorney. With all due respect to our county attorney, we had a smaller pool locally, and we could go that way. And it was a little bit easier, I think, than this county administrator search will be. But we do need to talk about how to incorporate community input. I agree with Misty. We need to have that. We do know that we have a very close relationship with all the different organizations, the Chamber, the EDC, the different citizens groups, the Mr. Marshall's group, for example. I mean, folks are going to want to be involved in this decision. It's a question of how to best accomplish that. But I'm really, really interested to get the young folks' perspective, because they're the ones that are going to probably be affected the most by this decision. And we have so many in that millennial age group that are choosing to come here, and we want them to come here. We want them to see this as a great place to work and raise their families, so we got to figure out how to get that done.
Reggie?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we have some community input also. I think that's very, very important. And I do have a question. From the last search that we had, was community input involved in?
We never
got that far.
Yeah, we were just getting to it.
It was intended to, if I can, let you, to go out and have different, coffees and meetings with people from all the different agencies, but the deal got derailed way before we got to that point, I guess.
And I think that's what we need to make sure, that it is built in, that we hear from the community as far as maybe a recommended suggestion. Now, I don't know whether or not that's before we identified it's probably after we identified the group, the firm that's going to lead or guide us in this direction. We'll want to hear back from counties like Escambia that's already doing it on some of their bullet points, as far as what are some of the things that they're making sure that they address within their search. I mean, we already know now one of our bullet points, we want community input. I'm just curious on how some of the other counties are looking at when they're bringing their administrator in. So please make sure. I don't know who does that. Do we do it, or do we have staff to do it? Who reaches out to you? Oh, sorry. Just make sure we identify those bullet points, and if we can maybe look at 2 or 3 to see what they have in common. I mean, that'll kind of strengthen, the direction on where we need to go. In other words, if you have 2 or 3 other counties out there that may be looking for a county administrator, something like that, and some of the bullet points are consistent, that'll kind of give us some immediate guidance as far as what we need to have out in front of us. So that's
okay. Thank you. Misty.
And that's how government works. We don't recreate the wheel. We look at what other people have done, and we refine it so that it fits Manatee County. I have a question about this process that we're talking about today. So today we're just talking about the first step in the process of finding our next county administrator. Will we have another workshop or meeting to discuss what we want in a county administrator?
Absolutely.
So that will be a separate meeting, correct? Thank you.
Yeah, you want me to speak to that?
Sure.
Sure. There will be a variety of meetings with the board. Obviously, deciding, whether to use a search firm and who that might be and so forth. We'll get that fleshed out, and once that decision is made, then whoever we're doing that search with and however we're doing it will be another meeting with the board to sit down and talk about timelines. It'll be to develop a candidate profile. What are we searching for? What are those characteristics and so forth that we need to speak to? How are we going to get to some of that? So there'll be several meetings that you'll be sitting down and being able to make those decisions. The one thing I want to make sure we keep on the radar is, just think about time factor too, because this whole process from beginning to end, again, depending on, how involved you want that process to be, takes time to do. And so certainly if you're going to bring in candidates from outside the area, you want to be respectful of their schedules and their ability to travel, and then how long do you want them to be here, so that you can do your due diligence in meeting these candidates and having the community meet them and so on and so forth. So all of that will be part of the planning, but the timeline in terms of your sense of urgency and when you want all of that to happen and when you want that new county administrator on board is going to drive the timeline and how involved all of these steps can be.
Commissioner Whitmore?
Nick already sent us the FACT, County Administrators Recruitment Services guide.
Okay, okay. I don't see anybody else. Just to, again, I think the way is to go is with the search firm. I liked Mickey's idea of maybe putting together a blue ribbon panel of local people to come in, but from a, I think maybe we can discuss it at the work session some further, but I think, that may become a little unwieldy, and to have all of them having to vent some 100 applications. And then to me, the big issue there is, I believe that, some very highly qualified people that would typically want to apply for this job may not do so because it immediately becomes public record. And so suddenly the person who's in another county who maybe would be great is going, well, gee, I'm climbing up the, this ladder, and, as soon as I submit it to the county, it now becomes a public record. And so suddenly his or her boss is saying, where are you going? Type of thing. So it can be somewhat of a deterrent. Maybe it's not a big factor, but, we want to get the best and the brightest to apply for the job. So, I think it'd be great to have the public input, potentially right up front, and I'd like to maybe think through that a little bit more. But sitting here today, it might be a little unwieldy, or it may just be a little too much burden on Rodney and this group to sit there and spend our spare time flipping through resumes and then trying to vent the people and this and that, where it might, again, I think, be money well spent to have, somebody who specializes it and will do all that venting, can do it in private, so the people that apply, their bosses don't know that they've applied for the position until such a time that they get whittled down to be in the into the finalist group. Commissioner Benak.
Yeah, and as you were speaking, it occurs to me that, this public input should be sooner rather than later. I mean, we're going to be talking about the things we want to see in a county administrator, and certainly that's always going to be a hot topic for not just this board, but the public. So that should be in the schedule very early, and just let people have the opportunity to come forward and say what they're interested in before we actually engage someone maybe that we need to have that kind of public input. I think that would be a good thing.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody else on the board, so I think we'll close this subject, and then Carol or Mickey was saying something about on the public notice from the previous
Did we need to
discussion.
I think some people might want to give us comments on.
But we still got to address that too.
Sorry about that.
Formal action.
Okay, let me go back. You can think about that, and we'll open up for public comment on the process of procuring a new county administrator. Mr. Marshall?
Thank you. For the record again, Sandy Marshall with the Federation of Manatee County Community Associations. I do have a copy I received when we had the last go-around on trying to find a county administrator. And there's quite a list, number of them. And as Commissioner Whitmore pointed out, and I think Commissioner Benek said the same thing, the Federation was left with the view that out of the 10 people there was only about 3 on that list that looked like we'd even think about. And then we wrote a letter, and I'll pull that letter out and I'll resend it, and I'll throw a couple of ideas in there with it after I confer with our people that will help you. But one of the things that jumped out at me as we were listening to the comments is it might be appropriate, since you've been through this exercise already to a point, some of you at least, is to put down a list of what you think we need to have, and then immediately throw that out and then get some input from the county people, such as an organization like ours that's been involved with this, or others, good groups in town that would like to play into this thing, weigh into it. And then put those together and then immediately get them in Rodney's hands so he can start going down the list, because what it seemed to me, I detected that there was a loss of communication between what the county and the public wanted with what was being suggested. No reflection on anybody. I'm not trying to cast any aspirations, but there was a breakdown in that thing somehow. And that's what jumped out at our group here when we looked at you need to be thinking about, for instance, people that have coastline experience. We live on a coastline. Whether they're from Florida or from Louisiana or any of the coastlines in the United States, even Alaska. It doesn't make any difference, and you don't have to do that. There were people there that were from the mountain country. Maybe they've got some ideas that would be appropriate. But it seems to me, with a county that's growing as fast as this one is, and as big as it is, and it's going to be bigger, we need somebody that's got some contact with that kind of growth, with coastline activities. I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else from the public wish to speak on this topic? Seeing nobody, we'll close this and go back to I on the acting administrator.
Commissioners, you could simply make a supplemental motion to instruct the county attorney's office to address item I in the ordinance rewrite and to clean up the inconsistencies between G and I. And I suppose in an abundance of caution, the supplemental motion also ought to include authorization for my office to advertise the ordinance for public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is
Who made the motion?
Commissioner Whitmore.
Actually, I did.
Oh, you did, okay.
I'm sorry, I did.
I just have a question.
Commissioner Benek, and then I seconded.
Okay, Mickey, at one point you said that you don't, this was inconsistent of everything else, So are you going to eliminate it, or you don't know? I mean, it's not for anything today, but it's future. We've never done it in the past.
To be very honest, I probably ought to be eliminated.
Okay, so you'll
Probably
recommend
ought to be
that. I mean,
eliminated.
you'll go through it and tell us your recommendation.
Certainly.
Okay. It's
Certainly.
kind of messing everything else up. It's contradicting what you're doing. Okay.
Yep.
So we have a motion and a second. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this? No? Okay. All those in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Okay, any commissioner comments today? Start.
I just want to thank, because I saw Bob here, I wanted to thank the EMS. My husband was taken to the hospital, and he has a different name. They didn't know who he was, and I appreciate it. I sent you a message that he wanted me to let you know that the EMS was very professional and they knew what they were doing. And from a doc for like 44 years, we appreciate it. And then I had the opportunity to see a whole bunch of them in the emergency room at Manatee. And they got a beautiful ER, boy, do they have a lot of patience. And I mean, all kinds of patience. And your guys, I watched them take in and out stretchers and bring people in, and they had a rapid response out in the old ER entrance of an overdose. And I'm hearing nurses, anybody got Narcan? And I'm thinking, oh my God, here we are. This is the real world. And your guys, I just wanted you to tell your employees that they were very professional in both instances, and I just sat in the room with Andre and I saw all that. I just want you to know that you should be proud of your department, and I know we are. That's all.
Reggie, have anything?
Nope.
Priscilla?
Only if a department head had something to add, that, you know, they didn't really have a chance to speak. If they would like to say something, I would like to hear from them, if that's possible.
Certainly.
Once they finish, that's one of the things that I did want to talk about, but I was kind of holding my peace on the whole thing. Within all this search and everything like that, I think it's very important that, and I don't know how this is done, but we do need to hear from the department heads, from the individuals. Yeah. I mean, because we're talking about a team. We're talking about a team, and it doesn't matter what role you play, whether it's the leadership role as far as the county administrator, or you're playing another role as a department head. I'm just concerned about the continuity and how all of that stays together. So I was reluctant, to be honest with you, because I don't want to do something that shouldn't be done or say something that shouldn't be said. But I was reluctant. But I wanted to hear from some of the department heads about, you know, this process of how we move forward and what they think.
Good.
So noted.
Good point.
But I was kind of reluctant, to be honest with you.
No, this is a
Instead of me speaking, I'd like to hear them.
Yeah.
Mr. Gore?
It's okay, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioners. Mike Gore, Utilities Director. Just a few minutes of your time. It was good today to hear that y'all are worried about continuity between us. Everything you've heard has been right on the money. I can speak for a number of the directors, I think, in our own private talks, that we have Sherry's back, if that's the way you go. What I've been hoping to get across that we didn't get to finish the process last time was that as y'all went through this, and you do go through an interview process, I believe every director would do their best to try to pick a candidate, the list of candidates that are the most qualified from what we see, and each of our disciplines that we have to work with. I know that's only a piece of the pie to a job as important as that administrator's job. I would never attempt a job like that, just for the record. But we looked at those before, but we never finished the process. When y'all had it down to 10, the directors were given the opportunity to look. And I believe every director would do their best to try to find that match. If it turns out that Sherry's not that person, I know that you'd have all their support. And I just wanted to share that with you, that we'd be more than willing to look through, feed you, talk to you about what we see on the res. I believe every director would agree with that. So thank you for pointing it out. We would much love a part in it.
Thank you, Mike.
Can I ask him a question? And I'm going from memory, which is always scary. Wasn't there a process on hiring directors where directors were all involved? Can you explain that a little bit? Or if you can't, maybe Ed can or...
Commissioners, thank you for asking. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I'd rather leave that one with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
When we recruit directors, we go through a process that just doesn't include one interview. We have a process that the final candidates will come to town, and we go down to the Crosley, and we have a process where each candidate will have to go through a series of interviews. One room is myself, the 2 deputy county administrators, and the director of HR. In another room are other directors, and they will get a chance to interview. Another room is made up of the people that are going to report to that director. And another room is made up of the customers that director will be serving.
That's the community.
And then the candidates will spend a day going through that, what you would look at as a gauntlet of interviews. And at the end of the day, the candidates will go off, and I will go with the deputies to each room, trying to solicit from them their thoughts. And I can tell you, we have never had a unanimous decision on who the best candidate was. But we let them know up front there's not a lot of voting that's going to take. There's no voting. It's just I'm looking for their opinions. We assume that if they get to that final group, be it 3, 4, or 5 individuals, that they could do the work. The question is, will they fit? Will they fit with this board? Will they fit with the Wednesday morning department director group? And it's important to get everybody's input, and that's why we go around the room. I think the only time we ever had unanimity in that process was one time, and that was the selection of Jerry Lopez. Other than Jerry, it's been
G-Lo.
It's been quite the experience to go through and see that. It's usually 2 or 3 people in each room, so you're not going to invite a large crowd in, but 2 or 3 people in 4 or 5 different rooms, you get quite a cross-section of opinions.
That's interesting.
So is that something that we could potentially look to build in?
If I could, that would be a process that would help narrow down the candidates for you then to come in. You wouldn't necessarily be part of that group, but that would be a process to narrow down 2 candidates to 3.
And that's where our community input come in, the department heads and things of that, those different categories. That's where they come in at. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and if I could, I'd like to hear from Rodney how this could be, I mean, you don't have to do it right now, maybe you've been thinking about this already, but if we could incorporate something like this in the process where staff would have an opportunity, department heads and the public, that sounds like it might be a good idea.
Yeah, sure. Just to add on to what County Administrator said, that process is after an exhaustive process that leads to those candidates appearing. I think of my own experience when I came down from Minnesota. It was a very thorough process. I had to write a paper. I had to do a variety of interviews and go through quite a process before I got to come down and appear before a variety of groups and speak to them. And so it was the same thing with Jerry Lopez. We did video interviewing, we did all sorts of things before you finally get to the point that these are the folks that we want to spend our time with. And really, as Mr. Hunsaker explained, by that time, you're really more or less checking for fit and maybe confirmation of what they presented up to that point. But it's really about, are they going to fit with the team? Because that's why we want to get in front of them and meet them and so forth. But these are the processes that you can incorporate into your search. We had talked, Commissioner Johnson and I had talked previously about some of the moving parts there. There's a variety. You want as much information as you can get on these candidates, and so every aspect of the search, whether it's a profile analysis of matching those characteristics that you want, having them answer in writing certain pointed questions that you want to know about their background or their thought process, video interviewing, getting them before you, seeking input from a variety of stakeholders, from a variety of groups. You want different perspectives. As we had talked before, you want to be clear in terms of this is a decision I will make, but I want that input. It's not a process where you get to vote. It's a process where the board will make that decision, but they want as much information and as much input as they can. So absolutely.
Okay. It occurs to me that is what we can do, and we need to be clear about what we can do versus what we want this search firm to do, so that we don't run into conflicts. And I'm not sure we quite had that. Maybe as we learn.
We need to discuss it in the work session.
Okay.
Because, type of thing. Vanessa?
Yeah, just to add, that's not a bad idea because it also gives the applicants an opportunity to get a feel for some of the directors in the county that they would oversee. Mm-hmm. So it's a good idea. That's it.
Okay. Betsy,
I think John still wants to speak,
I'm sorry,
I believe.
John. How could I miss you?
Maybe someone else, I don't know.
I, for one, John Barnett, Building Development Services, I, for one, very encouraged what I've heard here this morning. Thank you. You know, I reinforce what Mike said. We're all behind Sherry. We think she's a great leader. You know, and it's one of the things that you often look at when you're looking for important positions is leadership. You all understand that. You're leaders in your own district. You're leaders in this county. You've been elected because of your leadership skills. People recognize those. You know, not everybody has the opportunity to complete their education. And last summer, I was at a fundraiser for a young man running for governor. His name was Adam Putnam. And I know a couple of you were there. I remember you being there. And I was intrigued at what he talked about when it comes to our young people and their education. And we all believe, I believe, education is very important. And Adam said in his remarks that, you know, not every child needs to go to college. They need to learn a trade. They need to have some focus on what they want to do for their life. But maybe that's not college. And he was, you know, talking about reinforcing different types of alternative education processes to teach people how to make a living and do that. Because, you know, a lot of kids get out of school and they've got a huge debt, you know, from going to school and no job prospects. And we have people every day applying for our planner position jobs that, you know, they just don't make that much money. And it's difficult. But education is important. Leadership is the most important thing to me, along with someone who is a collaborator, someone who will bring all parties to the table and work with them to come out with a direction that is good for everybody, good for the board, good for staff, more importantly, good for the people in this community, because yes, we are growing, and we need that collaboration. I've always seen Sherry do that. She's always asked me, what do you think? And I think that's very important, but thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other associates that would like to come up and speak? Okay, keep moving along then. Betsy, any comments?
No, I think we're excited about this opportunity. Right. You know, it's going to be a bit of work to get where we want to be, but I think we have enough discussion and input. I think we can come up with a great result. And you know, Ed, I hope you'll be involved. I mean, you certainly know this position better than anyone, and you're going to be around for a while. I hope you will be involved and give us direction. You have the whole time I've been on the board, and it certainly has worked for me. So I hope you will stay involved.
Thank you. I'm not leaving town. March 1st will come and go, and I'll still be in town. I'd be happy to assist you in this recruitment. I understand the importance of it. I've been through it a few times myself. I know the pitfalls and the issues. I think it's important for you to have that discussion to get comfortable. From my perspective, for you to discuss is the importance of somebody having Florida experience. If you haven't lived elsewhere, you just don't know how unique Florida is. And if you want to keep the momentum up, I would suggest you focus on someone that understands the state, because if you bring someone in from elsewhere, it will take them a while to figure out Florida. But that's your decision, and you can do the nationwide search, but I think there's a wholesome candidate pool in the state of Florida for you to pick from, but it's your decision. Thank you.
Misty?
Thank you. I'm also very excited about this process, and I think that it's going to be good as we all work together towards it. Shifting gears, I did contact our chairman over the weekend and asked that he put an item on an upcoming agenda, and so just to give especially Mr. Gore some background information, I would like for us to explore if there is the ability to defer utility costs for our federal employees who are going without a paycheck until they receive a paycheck. I spoke with an individual this weekend who is struggling without a paycheck, and there are many people in our community who work for the federal government. I've been working with businesses locally in my district to see how they can support our federal residents, and so that will be coming up, and I'll be looking to see if there's a way that the county can support the federal employees.
Let me help you a little bit. We're already doing that. We just haven't advertised that.
Okay.
We have the ability to work out payment arrangements with them and things like that. We just hadn't went public with it because I felt like it'd be something I need to talk to the board about if that was their wish. But we are, if they tell us that they're struggling, they're out of work because they're a federal employee, then we're working out a time payment with them for each one.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Mike.
Misty.
Vanessa, any comments?
Nothing. Try not to
Palmer?
smile.
I'm sorry, did I hear my name?
Yes.
I was
Chatting.
chatting with the administrator.
in class.
I have nothing, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Ed?
Thank you, sir. Nothing.
Nothing? Okay. Well, with that, meeting adjourned.
We're at 1:30.